The plane had landed. Everyone should have survived. The runway was solid beneath the wheels, concrete meeting the aircraft's landing gear. The pilots had done their job perfectly. The aircraft had completed its descent successfully. 491 people were alive on that aircraft. Alive and breathing, safe on solid ground. On the runway in Saudi Arabia, their ordeal should have been completely over. But something was terribly and catastrophically wrong. The doors would not open. The emergency exits remained sealed shut. The mechanism that should open them had failed. The electrical power that controlled them was gone. Smoke was filling the cabin rapidly and relentlessly. Dark, thick, choking smoke pouring from somewhere deep inside the plane. From below them, from the cargo hold. Toxic fumes that burned the lungs of anyone who breathed them. That blinded the eyes. That filled every space with poison. That covered the windows so nobody could see outside. People were screaming in absolute terror. Screaming and pounding desperately at the doors with their fists. Pushing against the exits with all their strength. Their hands pounding on windows that would not break. Mothers holding their children close to their chests. Workers holding on to each other in desperation. All trapped inside a sealed metal coffin sitting on a runway in Saudi Arabia. Trapped like prisoners. The plane had landed safely, but the captain kept the doors shut. Locked. Sealed. Forever sealed. Inside that cabin, the impossible was happening. Something no one had prepared for. Something no one had anticipated would happen after a successful landing. People were burning alive. 301 people would burn alive on the ground in the next minutes. Let us go back. Let us understand how this tragedy happened. Let us start in Karachi, Pakistan. The year was 1980. August. A hot month. A humid month. A month when thousands of workers fled their homeland seeking employment opportunities overseas. Seeking fortune and better lives. Seeking to escape poverty and limited opportunities. Pakistani construction workers were flying to Saudi Arabia. Going to build cities and buildings. Going to earn money. Going to send money home to families waiting thousands of miles away in their villages. To wives waiting at home. To children waiting for their fathers. To parents depending on their wages for survival. These were ordinary men, not famous, not wealthy, not important in the eyes of the world. But they mattered. They mattered profoundly to the people who loved them. They mattered to families counting on them. They mattered to children waiting for their fathers to return with gifts and money. Among them was a man we will call Ahmad, a skilled carpenter with years of experience, 32 years old, from a small town outside Karachi. He had never left Pakistan before this journey. This was his first international flight. His family had saved money for 3 years to buy his airline ticket. 3 years of struggle and sacrifice. Saving every rupee carefully.
His wife had wept when he left the house that morning. Not sad tears, not tears of despair or fear.
Tears of hope and possibility. Tears of what might be. She knew he would send money home to her and the children. She knew his wages in Riyadh would be triple what he could earn in Pakistan. Triple the money. She knew this sacrifice was necessary for their family. She knew their children would benefit from his hard work and earnings.
She did not know she would never see him again. She did not know she would spend the rest of her life wondering how he died.
Wondering what his last moments were like.
On August 19th, 1980, at 3:45 in the afternoon, Saudia Airlines Flight 163 departed from Karachi International Airport. A Boeing 735-2 aircraft. Modern for the time, well-maintained by the airline. Crewed by experienced pilots who had flown this route many times before. The plane climbed smoothly into the sky, banking over the Arabian Sea, ascending steadily to cruising altitude, 35,000 feet above the ocean. The flight would take approximately 2 hours and 15 minutes. 2 hours between Karachi and Riyadh. Ahmad sat by a window seat. He had paid extra money for the window seat. He wanted to see Saudi Arabia arrive beneath him. He wanted to watch the desert landscape come into view. The land that would be his workplace for the next 2 years. the land that would provide for his family. The flight attendants served lunch to all the passengers. Chicken and rice, hot bread and butter, coffee and tea. Most passengers slept peacefully. Some read newspapers. Some thought about the future. It was a routine flight. Absolutely routine. There was nothing unusual about this flight. Nothing suspicious. Nothing that suggested this ordinary Tuesday in August would become the deadliest aviation disaster in Arabian history. Nobody could have predicted what was coming. Nobody knew that this flight would change aviation forever. 2 hours into the flight, something changed in the machinery. A small alarm sounded quietly in the cockpit. A sensor in the lower deck cargo hold had detected smoke. Just a small sensor. Just a quiet alarm. But it triggered something significant and serious. The captain was informed immediately of the detection. The flight engineer investigated the readings carefully and thoroughly. Smoke in the cargo hold. Confirmed by the instruments. The readings were clear and definitive. The crew consulted their procedures and manuals. But in 1980, procedures for cargo hold fires were vague and poorly written, ambiguous and unclear in their instructions, poorly documented and not well understood. No one had written comprehensive procedures because this scenario seemed unlikely to ever happen. The cargo hold was physically separate from the passenger cabin. There was general understanding that a fire down there could be contained and managed. Could be controlled! The captain made a decision quickly. He would return to Riyadh immediately. Not a panic decision, not an emergency declaration. A calm and rational decision. An ordered, professional return to the nearest airport. He radioed air traffic control. He reported smoke in the cargo hold to ground control. He said the aircraft would return to Riyadh. The response from the ground was acknowledgement and preparation. Prepare for an emergency landing. But the crew did not understand what was burning below them, what was actually developing below the passengers. Modern aviation had procedures for many types of emergencies. Procedures for engine failure and shutdown. Procedures for hydraulic loss and failures. Procedures for pressurization problems and decompression. But cargo hold fires in 1980 were not well understood by pilots or procedures, not well documented in training manuals. The captain did not know the true severity of what was burning. The smoke detection system gave readings, but readings could mean many different things. A small fire burning slowly, a large fire consuming materials rapidly, electrical malfunction triggering false alarms, sensor error or malfunction. The pilots were making critical decisions based on incomplete and limited information. As the aircraft descended toward Riyadh, passengers sensed that something was deeply wrong. The angle of descent was steep and unusual. The altitude was dropping faster than normal. Experienced passengers exchanged nervous glances with each other. This was not a normal landing approach. This was emergency descent. Flight attendants moved through the aisles with forced calm and composure. They said nothing to the passengers. They gave no explanation. The silence made everything feel worse and more frightening. 30 minutes before landing, the captain transmitted a mayday call to ground control. His voice was professional and controlled and calm. He reported smoke in the cargo hold to the tower. He reported the aircraft was descending for an emergency landing at Riyadh. He said the situation was under control. Calm words spoken carefully. Words designed to prevent panic among passengers and crew. But the words did not match the actual reality of what was happening in the aircraft and below. The aircraft touched down at Riyadh International Airport at 1:56 in the afternoon, local time. A perfect landing executed by the pilots. The pilots executed a textbook perfect landing. Engines reversed thrust with full power. The aircraft slowed gradually, rolling down the runway. Every eye on the ground turned toward the sky. Fire trucks moved into position around the runway. Ambulances stood ready for any injuries. Emergency crews stood prepared for evacuation. The plane had landed safely and successfully. Everyone on the ground and passengers held their breath. The critical moment was approaching fast. The aircraft was rolling toward a complete stop. Passengers were just minutes away from being rescued and evacuated. And then something terrible happened. Something that should not have happened. The engines kept running. The pilots did not cut the engines. The propellers kept spinning and turning. The turbines kept running. 30 seconds passed. 60 seconds. 90 seconds. The engines were still running. Why were the engines still running? The captain was trying desperately and frantically to pressurize the aircraft, trying to keep smoke from entering the main passenger cabin, but the pressurization system was failing. The smoke was already inside the cabin, already spreading through the ventilation system. As the plane came to a complete stop on the tarmac, the captain gave the order to open the doors immediately. He pressed the button to open the main cabin door.
Nothing happened. The electrical system had been affected and damaged by the fire. Critical systems damage. The door mechanisms would not respond to his command.
He pressed the button again and again.
Nothing responded. The doors were sealed completely shut. The captain kept the doors shut because the electrical power that controlled them was gone. There was no backup electrical system available. There was no manual override mechanism. The doors were simply locked and sealed.
Inside the cabin, smoke poured in through the ventilation system. Dark smoke, suffocating smoke, poisonous toxic smoke. Passengers realized what was happening to them. Some stood up immediately in panic. Some tried to remain calm. Some screamed. Some pressed their faces against windows, hoping someone outside could help them somehow. The rescue teams on the ground saw the smoke coming from the aircraft. They saw it immediately. Thick black smoke, heavy smoke, smoke pouring from the windows and fuselage. They radioed to the cockpit. "Open the doors! Open the doors now, immediately!"
But the cockpit had no answer to give. The radio was dead. The electrical systems were failing completely. No communication could be made.
Outside, the fire crews could see people moving inside the aircraft, hands pressed against windows, faces visible in the smoke, expressions of absolute terror and fear. The rescue teams moved toward the aircraft quickly, but they could not get inside. The doors would not open for anyone. The emergency exit handles would not function. The windows could not be broken quickly, not quickly enough to save anyone. Inside the cabin, the smoke thickened rapidly. Ahmed was still in his seat. His hands gripped the armrests tightly in fear. He could barely see across the row ahead of him. The smoke stung his eyes. His lungs burned with each desperate breath he took. Around him, people were coughing violently, gasping for air that was not there, crying out in fear.
Some had fainted from the toxic fumes and heat.
The temperature was rising continually.
Rising rapidly. The heat becoming unbearable and intense. The fire was spreading upward, spreading rapidly toward the passenger cabin where 491 people were breathing. 301 people died in that aircraft.
They died in their seats and rows.
They died in the aisles.
They died struggling at exits that would not open for them.
They died because the electrical system failed completely. Because backup systems did not exist.
The investigation that followed was devastating.
Black box recordings revealed the chaos in the cockpit.
The pilots were trying everything possible to save the aircraft, trying to restore power, trying to open doors manually and force them, trying to communicate with rescue teams.
But it was too late for everything. The fire had spread faster than anyone anticipated. The structural damage was catastrophic and severe. By the time any door could possibly be opened, the heat inside had become unsurvivable.
Too intense.
Aviation authorities around the world studied this disaster carefully. They found that cargo hold fires were not considered a primary threat in 1980. The assumption was that fires would burn slowly. There would be time. But the materials on Flight 163 burned differently than expected. Fire spread rapidly, more rapidly than predicted.
The smoke was toxic, more toxic than calculated.
Heat was intense, more intense than anticipated.
Everything that could go wrong went wrong simultaneously.
Laws changed because of Flight 163. Aircraft were required to have backup electrical systems for door mechanisms. Cargo hold detection systems were improved dramatically. Emergency procedures were completely rewritten. Crews received new training and education. Aircraft were retrofitted with redundant safety systems. Modern planes have multiple backup systems now. When you fly today, you fly on a plane shaped by this tragedy.
Every safety system exists because of August 19th, 1980. 301 people died.
Their sacrifice changed aviation forever.